Gentlemen, a very good afternoon. Today I will be presenting on corporate governance. First of all, I'm going to present a research paper, and then I will be addressing my keynote speech on some general challenges that we are facing right now in the changing world. So starting with the research paper, corporate governance, as we know, is a very important concept, not only in organizations, companies, even in governments now, okay, because we have seen that this is a big barrier for the development and for the advancement of many countries. So it can be defined as a process of how organizations are directed and managed. We can see that many companies may be focusing mainly on profitability, but for long-term sustainability, corporate governance also is very important. The objective of this research paper is to analyze determinants of corporate governance practices, which have been adopted by some listed companies in Mauritius, the relationship between the determinants and their performance, how they have performed, and obviously to offer some recommendations as to how listed companies should adopt this concept of corporate governance. Now, why listed companies? Because listed companies, we have all the information are publicly available compared to private companies. Now, just going through the literature review, we have seen that determinants of corporate governance practices, some of them are the board size, who are the board members, the board independence in decision making, and also the board diversity. The empirical review have shown that these factors have a direct relationship with company performance, both size, both independence, and both diversity. We have numerical empirical evidence in the literature, okay, which have shown that these factors have significant impact. The methodology that have been used here in this particular research, okay, was a population of listed companies on the official stock market. We had 25 companies in all, from ranging from investment banks and insurance, finance, and commercial companies. And 12 of them were selected for this particular research, ranging from the year 2012 to year 2021. Now, 2022 and 2022 has been excluded mainly because of the COVID-19. Okay, so we have focused on the years where the company were performing well and were able to adopt this concept of corporate governance. Now, some hypothesis testing were formulated to test the significance of these particular factors on the company's performance, mainly the return on asset, return on equity, okay, that were used. Some mathematical equations were formulated to test the significance of the independent factors on return on asset and return on equity. Based on the data that were collected, we were able to generate some descriptive statistics, mainly the mean and the standard deviation for the dependent variable and also the independent variable. Now, I know it's a bit technical, so I will try to move on to mainly the inference statistics. So the correlation between the different variables, independent and dependent variables, were tested, okay, whereby we have seen that there are some positive and negative relationship, okay, between the different independent and dependent variables. The inference statistics were also obtained, whereby we have seen that there are some significant relationship from the different variables, and also some insignificant relationship, okay, which were based on the data that were collected. Now, to conclude, these results have shown that there is a general acceptable standard of corporate governance practices from different listed companies. We have seen that many companies, listed companies that have not adopted the concept of corporate governance, many of them, not to say all of them, ultimately in the long term, they have failed they have closed business, they have gone in voluntary administration, or they were removed from the stock market, okay, due to many problems, just like problems in their financial statements, frauds, and so on. Most of the listed companies in Mauritius are now following the established corporate governance codes. Why? Because most of the listed companies, they are scrutinized by the regulators. Okay, all the accounts are checked, audited. So many of them, you will see that we have seen a few companies that have removed themselves from the stock market by buying out their shares, and ultimately they have to close business, not to be regulated so vigorously. So it can be concluded that listed companies in Mauritius have large both size, but these both size depends on the size of the company as well. So depending on whether it's a small, medium, or large companies. Now, some of the recommendations for this particular research: the listed companies in Mauritius should thereby ensure that the board is not too large, given that bigger board size represents a big hindrance in making decisions. The results show that performance of listed companies is negatively impacted by having a higher board size. We have seen that companies that have higher board size, okay, there is a negative impact on their performance because it becomes difficult to take decisions. In terms of implication to the policymakers, they should ensure that the board size is not too large, since communication is more effective with small board size. Furthermore, we have seen a serious lack of diversity. Now, why diversity? As we know, in countries like India, even in Mauritius, we do have people from different sections, okay, different religious background. So we have to ensure that each one of them is fully represented in our board. Policymakers additionally should ensure the presence of women in the board. Now we are talking about gender equality, whereby, okay, it's very important to have more, not to say more, but at least equal number of men and women to start with on the different boards. So that's that's some of the highlights, okay, from this particular research work. Now, I would like to continue with my presentation for the keynote speech, which is more from a general perspective, mainly on the concept of the changing world. Yeah. Now, international conference on the changing world. So, of course, linked to industry, sustainability, infotech, and mankind. Now, changing world, yes, the world is changing. We have seen many positive changes, but as well as negative changes, whereby we are all being impacted. That's a fact. Now, sustainable industrialization, linked to what is the thematic area of today, industrialization. Yes, this is a long-term process of transformation towards a desired vision of an industrialized economy. Why? Because we have seen that many economies that have moved toward this industrialized transformation are having a higher economic growth, especially after the COVID-19. We can see today, I believe the Indian economy is the first economy having a growth rate of around 8%, whereas most of the economies, even the American economies, the European economies, are lagging behind. Very far away from this 8%. Even economies like the UK are in recession now. So just to tell you how the leading powers, the American economy, the European economy, are now going backward, and how other economies like the Indian economy, we have the Chinese economy are now taking over. It contributes to wealth creation. That's clear. Social development, because we see a shift in the number of poor people, okay, changing to become in the middle income category. Environmental sustainability, yes, because economic growth is linked not only to industrialization but also to the environment, how the environment is changing, because this is linked to food security as well. So all these components are interrelated in a certain manner. Now, the necessity for industrialization of obviously technology. Now we are talking of AI. Driving and diffusing innovation. Now, we cannot progress if we don't have innovation. To have innovation, we need to invest in research. Today, an important component of any organization, any country, any particular multinational company, big amount are being invested in research and development in order to have innovation. If you don't innovate, you die. That's clear. Many companies that have not innovated, ultimately, they have died. Okay? Many big names, okay, we have seen it. If we talk of, for example, earlier we are buying many TVs and so on, Sony. Now Sony no longer exists, to say clearly. All have disappeared from the market. Why? Because if you don't innovate, you die. Okay? That's a very important component today. This is why research and development has become a very, very important factor for every company. And today we are standing here because it's an investment in education. Today we are investing in research and development also in a certain way. Okay, so that's very important. Developing new skills and attitudes, stimulating modern services, and internationalizing the economies. Now, classification of industries. Now, when we talk of industry, we can classify them into different types. Processing food, okay, wood, leather, refined petroleum and rubber products. These are more the resource-based industries. Low technology industries, textiles, garments, footwear, and so on. Medium technology industries, automotive industry, the chemicals, the metal products, and machinery. Good to know that earlier we had the Japanese firms like Toyota and Nissan, which were the first in the world. Now we have the Chinese automobile company, which is #1, and the Indian automobile company, which is second in the world. Nissan have with time, we can say they became bankrupt. Many of the models are not selling, so they are disappearing a bit in the automobile market. So this is a big opportunity for many developing economies like India and China, whereby they have seen a huge growth, okay, in the automobile industry. Now, high technology industries, electronic, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, precision instruments, aerospace. So we have seen the Indian economy in terms of pharmaceutical, whereby vaccines were produced and given not only to the Indian people, but also to the world. Even Mauritius has benefited a lot from the vaccines from India. We have seen the aerospace, whereby, I believe it was last year itself, whereby the first country to land on the dark side of the moon was the Indian aerospace. Now they are exploring the sun. So that's a huge progress, we can say, for humanity. So this is a very, very important sector, okay, whereby huge amount of money is being invested for research. Now, some challenges for the industry. Of course, air, soil, because big economies, of course, it's not a problem because they have huge amount of soil resources. But for small economies, this is becoming a big problem. Water, ground, and climate change. However, to end, I will talk a bit about the challenges for the world. Now, the big challenge for the world now is the wars that are happening. The Ukraine-Russia war. We have the Palestine and Israel war also. Now, these wars, we have seen that there are some countries which are funding the war by giving weapons and so on. But whereas, on the other hand, we have many countries which are delivering speech, okay, in order to stop the war, okay, in order to see to it that the war, at least there is a kind of consensus between the two countries to stop the war. I believe the Prime Minister of India has said it very clear that this is not an era of war. And this is very important because World War I and World War II, I was not here. I don't know how many of you were here and have witnessed these wars. But it's important not to have a World War III, okay, because this will have a big impact, okay, on supply chain, big impact on the economies, And given that we are a globalized world, so all of us will be affected, that's for sure. Now, as I have said, disruption in the supply chain, we have seen it with the Israel and Palestine war. Huge disruption, especially petroleum coming from countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other countries. So this is a big problem, especially for countries whereby we depend, okay, mainly on other countries for our food products and so on. Now, there are several countries that are quite autonomous. We can look at the Indian economy, whereby the Indian economy organization, they produce almost everything. But we do have, as I have said, many other countries that are dependent, okay, on others. Political stability is a big problem. We can say 2024 will be the most important year of the modern era. Election in the United States, election in India in around 2 months' time, and election in many big economies. Now, we can say that if you look at the US itself, if Donald Trump becomes the president again, we can be sure that the war between Russia and Ukraine will end, because he has already announced that he will not give any arms, he will not give any single dollar, okay, to Ukraine to fund any war. So that's a big change that we can see. Now, even in Indian economy also, the election will be in 2 months' time. So you can see that there is a direct relationship between the elections, who is in the government, and the stock market. So where the stock market will go, I know that we do have a favorite for the Indian election, because we do follow the news every day of what is happening. So let's see, because it's important to see to it that we don't have any kind of political instability, because this disrupts many things. Okay, so that's very important. Now, for challenge climate change, I believe most of the panelists have talked about it. So I won't give much time to it, but it is affecting all countries, we can see. Not one country has been spared. Ethics and corporate governance, very important, not only for countries, okay, countries, governments, organizations, multinational companies. Labor, we have seen that countries like China have witnessed a decrease in their population for the first time. So there is a huge challenge for labor. So good news that we have India, countries like India, Bangladesh, and Nepal. We have many Indians, Bangladeshi, and Nepali working in Mauritius. We have also the African countries. I believe they will be the one which will be providing labor for the whole world in the near future. And they are already providing, okay, also. Power, we have seen, we have seen a shift of power from the Western countries like the US and European countries now to the Asian countries like India, China. So this is a very important component of where the world is going. The power is shifting, okay, to the Asian countries now. We have seen it also with the organization of the G20, I believe it was last year, by India, whereby we can see that most of the countries are not following the Western world, the USA, the European countries, but more following the Indian and the G20 mode of having no wars, of not funding wars, and having peace with every country, and with helping other countries, as we have seen recently with the vaccine. I would like to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, of course, I will be glad to answer the questions.
Thank you so much, sir. Any questions from audience?
Everyone is hungry.
Indeed, sir.